You're listening to Crushing Club Marketing, a podcast for progressive club leaders ready to increase their club's revenue. Time for change begins right now. Most successful businesses have a defined sales process, one that identifies the best prospects, converts them into leads, and then nurtures those leads with emails into customers. Most private clubs are missing this process. When your club has a wait list, this isn't a big deal, but what happens when the well runs dry? Today we're talking about lead management with Kevin Page, Storyteller's lead HubSpot strategist and lead management expert. Hey, Kevin Page in the house. How's it going, Kev?
I'm great. How are you, Ed?
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today, and I know that our audience is interested in this topic because, as you know, working with many of our clients and clubs, that um, the actual how would you say it? The actual member application and intake process for that is not always the same at every club, and it can differ from club to club. But in general, it's a pretty outdated process. Like in your work, in the clubs that you've worked, what's sort of the typical process when someone expresses an interest or goes to a website to learn more about a club?
Yeah, great question. Oftentimes, these clubs will have some type of form on the website, whether that be a contact us form, request a tour, download our membership pricing, something along those lines. And that will send a notification to the membership director. That membership director typically is doing one of two things, right? They're either reaching out and sending, some type of personalized email to try to nurture that relationship and get to know the person a little bit better, or oftentimes they're just sending over whatever information that that particular person is asking for, and crossing their fingers and hoping that an application comes in soon after.
Right. And so, I mean, I'm in truth, I think that what we see a lot as well is that there isn't there might be some sort of like download, get our membership guide or something like that. But
Mhm.
in so many cases, especially the more, um, gosh, what would you say? Maybe the more conservative clubs are just like, hey, request a tour, get more information or something like that. Um, and while, I think that it's not that that doesn't work, right? I mean, it's not like
Mhm.
there isn't, you're not getting that information, but they're missing out quite a bit if all they're doing is responding to what, like a notification. That's what a lot of people get using club software today is they'll get a notification in their inbox, their email saying, "Hey, Kevin Page applied to be a member today," right? So they're missing out a lot of stuff, aren't they? I mean, as far as what they could glean from that person.
Yeah, well, what we oftentimes find when we're working with new clubs or consulting with new clubs is there's not much else after that initial outreach. So that initial outreach, many of these membership directors and clubs are, really great at, and being on the ball with, hey, those notifications come in. I want to strike while the iron's hot and get out to this person and see if, they're truly qualified and interested in joining the club. Others maybe want to either appear very exclusive, or and actually are very exclusive, and want to kind of handle the sales process with that sort of um, dynamic as well. So there's just, yep, here's the application process, um, and it's a bit colder. So either of those approaches, what typically happens is that after that initial approach, it's all right, they join or they don't. And if they don't join, there's very rarely a process in place for the ongoing nurturing of those people. And as we know, joining a club and membership for most folks is a big decision, and a decision that takes some time. A lot of people submitting those forms or understanding or trying to reach out and understanding what membership pricing looks like may not be ready to make that decision within the next 14 days, 30 days, even 6 months. So it is a bit of a process, but it's not always treated as that type of process, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Oh, for sure. And it's again, not to go too far down how old school a lot of processes are, but they have something that's just not necessarily the most efficient process. And I think the one thing I just don't want to lose sight of, if you're listening to this and you happen to be a membership director, you're going, my gosh, are you kidding me? Like I've got so much stuff I'm responsible for. And frankly, with social media today and with so much digital communications, not to mention a lot of membership directors are responsible for the club newsletter and other things that they're pulled in a lot of different directions, and we get it. So one of the things that we hope that you're able to walk away from today, if you're listening, is um, some ideas and ways that you can make that process a little bit more efficient, free you up to do some more things, and really focus on the the areas where you can really maybe drive the most success, and not just for yourself but for the club as well. So Kev, let's talk a little bit about the automation process, because when you say automation to people in the private club space, it's almost like oil and water. It's like, ooh, automation doesn't sound like a personal touch, which is very much what historically clubs have wanted to provide, that level of intimacy, especially since they're joining that prospect might be joining their club.
Mhm.
And yet automation can feel very very cold. So let's just talk about let's start with maybe what does that look like? And when we talk about automating the process of someone applying or filling out a form on the website so that the membership director doesn't have to handle each one, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I look at it in kind of two different parts, and the first part of it is really trying to optimize the time of let's say the membership director. Right? You just mentioned the number of hats that they wear, the responsibilities that they have, oftentimes to member retention and engagement, as well as driving new members. And so through that automation, what we're attempting to do is make sure that they're focusing their attention on the right people, the most qualified people. And so a lot of times, the initial outreach is pretty similar prospect to prospect that comes in. But once there's a reply that happens, or some type of actual connection, that's when automation might become a little bit more difficult because now you've had that connection, and you want to move forward with that context. And so oftentimes what we do with automation is that initial introduction or outreach can be an automated process. And we have a software called HubSpot that we use to actually implement and execute a lot of these automated actions. It appears that it's coming from your inbox. It looks like this membership director is emailing me directly. We can add what HubSpot calls personalization, where you can actually fill in people's first name or some other information that you might have about them. So it really does look like a personal touch point.
So
And with the
I was just saying, let's dive into that really quickly though,
Sure,
so we can talk about that initial engagement. So
yeah.
let's swap out this automation process to for what membership directors might be doing today. So I am interested in joining a club. I go to the membership page
Mhm.
and they say, there's a form that says, hey, tell us about yourself. I fill or if you're interested in membership, fill out this form, right? So I fill it out. Today, the
Mhm.
membership director gets it, and she replies back to me with, you in many cases, with membership information, with pricing and everything, and that's done manually. That person actually stops to do it. What does it look like in that automated world? I fill out the form, then what happens using HubSpot
Yeah.
that you mentioned?
Yeah, so oftentimes we'll have, some type of more nice design aesthetic marketing email that would go immediately following the form submission. Thanks so much for doing that. We'll have a member of our team reach out. We've just learned over the years that that's just a really important confirmation and touch point to ensure that that information has been received and that we're working on it. What we don't try to do is send a personalized outreach email immediately following a form submission, right? That looks very automated. We kind of want to create that artificial gap between that form submission and when someone might want to reach out. And clubs are different on that approach.
So you can actually set that time, right? What you're saying, so that it actually feels more natural, not like, hey, I just hit send on my form, and next thing you know, in my inbox, I've got a hey, thanks for your interest. So
Yeah,
independent, what you're saying, I think, is depending on your club and how you feel about that stuff. You could make it what 24 hours. You can make it
yeah.
2 hours. You can make it 20 minutes. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, and a lot of that is how maybe exclusive you want to appear, or if you are on a wait list and want to kind of create this sense of, we'll get to it when we can. We're really busy, or yeah, we're on top of it. An hour after that form submission comes in, there's an automated email going out that looks like it's coming from the membership director's inbox or email.
So the whole idea of being able to schedule the how much time elapses between when someone submits that form and gets the email is can create that sense of where a lot of people feel a lot of membership directors that I speak with at least are, afraid that it's going to feel too needy. And like you said, it can make it look like, we're not in a big hurry here. We will get back to you on our time. The one thing that I do think is sort of important to think of is that a lot of times when we're filling out those forms, we expect to get that information fairly soon. I mean, that's just one of those things I think that based on your club and how you handle things, you might want to look at it differently. But one of the other things that I know you've seen a lot of success with, Kevin, in your work is that is also when that email goes out that thank you for submitting or for your interest in our club, to then also provide whatever PDF or downloadable brochure, if you want to call it that, that you would typically send to someone to include it with that email. Is that best practice, do you think?
Yes, I do. And it might be easiest to look at that as sort of like a marketing email versus a sales email, if you will. And a marketing email has that more designed email look, might be from membership at yourclub.com or some type of inbox like that. And it's thanks so much for submitting the form. Here's the information you requested. Our team will be in touch shortly. That goes right away following the form submission. And in some cases, depending on how your website might be formatted, when they click that submit form, they could actually be taken to a web page or given that link right there in that experience as well. But either way, give them that information right away would be a best practice. But then to have that personalized follow up come from you soon after um, is something that we found a lot of success in as well. And again, that's really up to you on the cadence. You're probably right now grabbing those form submissions, a lot of people, and copying and pasting some type of message in there anyway. And this automation is just trying to remove that unnecessary, tedious work from your process.
So once someone receives that information, and let's just keep in mind that there are a lot of variables, right? I mean, there are a lot of different ways to set this up. There are a lot of different things you can include, not include. So what we're saying is not like this isn't gospel. This isn't like there's only one way to do this, and the process is really totally customizable. But from that, if I was the person who applies to the club, I'm automatically sent that information. So now I've actually sort of optimized that time of the membership director that they get a notification, right? That I have
Mhm.
filled out that information. What happens next?
Yeah, so in some cases, it may not even be important to send that notification to the membership director if you're automating that introductory outreach. Because what we typically try to do when we're consulting with clubs is to keep that membership director focused on people who are qualified and who may be, truly interested in looking at membership, and they're getting a lot of inquiries. And these introductory emails that are being sent in an automated fashion can help to understand, okay, who's actually responding to those. And once they respond, that pops up in their inbox just like any email would, right? And then they pick up the conversation from there and the automation shuts off. But if that visitor, that prospect, doesn't reply to that message, well, then another message could go out in a few days and another, right? To the point where you probably stop and store that person in your database to be later nurtured. But you kind of have worked them through that introductory process. They didn't show interest, and now they're earmarked for something later down the road.
So let's talk about that later down the road. So, and
Sure.
if I'm just recapping what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say um, is that the membership director might only get notified if that person reaches out again, which really, to what you were saying earlier, helps that membership director focus on the most qualified leads. I mean, how many times, we see this all the time where we've been in meetings actually with clients and the membership director gets up and says, "Oh, I've got to excuse myself because I have a tour that I'm supposed to do." And then they come back 5 minutes later saying, "Oh, they were qualified." And you think, "Wow, well, that was sort of a waste, a waste of time and energy and that sort of thing." But like what you're saying, so what happens next then? So this is where, we talk about this in the lead in of this episode, which is we all like wait lists, and anyone that's doing what we do, we love to try to help a club get to a point where they have a wait list. You love having wait lists, but what happens when it's gone? The one thing that we see quite a bit is that you've had people through the years reach out, and in some cases, one of our clients we were talking about the other day has a stack of about 700 names. Like loosely, she prints out all of the people who have applied, no idea who they are. But now, by people filling out the form, capturing their email addresses when they download information, you have a database that's built up. Not just in the cloud. I mean, this is businesses have been. I mean, you've seen this, Kev. I mean, you can shed more light on this than I can because you've worked so much with this. But database of names of people who have expressed interest. What can be done with that kind of information? I mean, within the confines of this discussion.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, oftentimes we know the sort of cyclical nature of clubs, and the seasonality, right? And when you might be making a push, especially around golf or around other activities that you may have or sports or things like that, um, to do some type of re-engagement campaign, typically an email campaign to an audience like that. All the people who have expressed interest in the past but didn't reply to your emails or didn't click that button to request a tour, right? They stalled out in the process after requesting information, and that's where they're stuck still. And instead of having this daunting task of, well, I have these 700 names, I guess I could start just ripping emails off to all of them. You have that stored in a database, and you can do it in a matter of clicks to say, let me just piece together a couple emails and shoot it off to this audience again and see what bounces back. See if some of these people re-engage or show interest again, or maybe do take action to request that tour and re-engage in the process.
And you had, I mean, I think this was kind of just a quick but interesting story. Client of ours has a wait list, and what they wanted to do is make sure that all the contacts that they also have just stay engaged. They sent an email out to those people saying, join our wait list, which, in full disclosure, I thought was a crazy idea, but it actually had some benefit.
Yeah, yeah, they had some success with it. So this was about fall in a climate where winter, outdoor winter golf is not a thing. And so the intention of the email was, yeah, join the wait list now if you're interested in playing golf next year, right? Because if we get to spring and then you reach out, the wait list is likely to be longer than it is now in October or November, whenever we sent that email. Yeah, and there was some success there. So just another creative thing that you can do when you have that database and that list of names that you can easily, the weather is nice outside in March. Let's send an email to all the people who have downloaded the guide in the past year, right? I mean, things like that can be done on a whim.
Right, exactly. And then even scheduling over time. And one of the things that we also talked about and touched on is this is when you can start determining the most qualified prospects. What are the different ways that using a tool, again, not to pitch HubSpot, we talk about it, but it is a tool that we work with quite a bit. What can you do within a tool like HubSpot to really try to identify the most qualified prospects?
Yeah. There's a few things, with the email marketing that we've been talking about. Who's opening the email? Who's clicking the email? Who's doing that multiple times? There's people who open an email 10, 12, 20 times, and that's all data that you can see in HubSpot and do things with, take action on. In addition to email, what HubSpot allows us to do is track visitors on the website as well. You can see which of those prospects are coming back to the website, what pages they're viewing, what buttons they're clicking, what videos they're watching, to understand how engaged they might be, and sort of also warm up your outreach to that person so it doesn't feel as cold of a touch point. And HubSpot, just to take it one step further, also allows you to actually attribute points to some of those actions. So you can give prospects a score based on how qualified they're perceived to be based on some of those things: email opens, web visits, and information about them, like what type of membership were they engaged in? Is it a social member engagement or a golf member? What might they have been interested in? Things like that.
And to take that even one step further, and not all clubs have catering services or weddings and events that are open to the public, or uh, some clubs obviously don't prioritize that, but some do. And so by segmenting, even right, so
hmm
and maybe if you could just do a quick high level, like how a club might do that and what you've seen as far as being able to capture all those contexts, people who are interested in golf, social, and then
Yeah.
banquets.
Yeah, many of the clubs that we work with also have a catering goal in mind, or an event and wedding goal. And
Monday golf
one of the
outings, right? I mean, that's
yeah,
another one.
yep, golf outings, exactly right. So one of the first things that we oftentimes do in consulting is to establish that segmentation right away. Right? Are you interested in membership or weddings, events, something along those lines? Just so we have that to know when we're segmenting and pulling lists for, gosh, what we should do an email campaign that promotes, the fact that we added new teas in our course. Well, you have a list of people that's probably not appropriate for, and those are all the people who have reached out to you looking for, a wedding venue, right? So it's really easy to be able to segment those folks when you use an automation tool such as HubSpot. But there's a lot of opportunity for segmentation depending on what kind of data you're bringing in. And so we talked a lot about, people submitting forms, but what we recommend when we implement a tool like HubSpot is, if people are calling you, if they're walking in and visiting the club and asking for information, if a member refers someone, that all of that information get brought into this tool. So you have all of that prospect information there. You know what message those people want to hear from you, and you can attempt to deliver the right message to the right people at the right time, which is kind of the second part of all the lead management automation conversation that I alluded to earlier, which is more of that user experience and creating a user experience that your prospects will respect and hopefully take action on.
And if you think about a lot of resorts, high-end hotels, those types of experiences, they're also very good at this, very good at making sure you're getting the right information at the right time. So we've talked about, that conversion point, right? Filling out the forms and automating that, taking some time off of your membership director, the nurturing of
Mhm.
these contacts and staying in touch and trying to figure out who the best and most engaged member prospects are, and and also weeding out those that aren't qualified, which is super valuable as well. Let's talk a little bit about the customer relationship management software, the CRM.
Mhm.
And it's just some, if you could maybe just share some best practices, how it's useful, especially at a time when reporting is so important for boards. They want to know what's going on, what the health of the club is. How are you seeing CRMs being used by clubs?
Yeah, you know, the segmentation is something that I already touched on, so I won't go too deep there, but really understanding what people have done to get into the CRM is a really important step. We work with a lot of organizations, clubs included, that have a list of names in their CRM or in spreadsheets or whatever they might be using, and they're not sure how they got them or what they might be interested in. So, that's a really important step, is making sure that when you're collecting that it comes in with some of that helpful information. But then from there, it's really important to understand what stage in the journey are these folks, and are they have they reached out and inquired about the membership guide, and that's where they stalled. Did they request a tour? They took a tour, and that's where they stalled. They didn't show up for their tour, and that's where they're at. So building some of these milestones in the CRM tool helps you really understand where people are in that overall journey, which can help craft the messaging that's going to be most beneficial to them.
Right. So just to put this in, what's in it for you as a membership director or as a general manager or someone who's trying to really understand what is the health of the club from a new member perspective, to be able to look into a CRM and to see how many people are at various stages of that consideration process or of your um, new member onboarding process or application process, to say, hey, we have actually right now, you know, 5 people that have actually applied and that we're vetting these prospects right now. And let's just say it's 5 people, just using, round numbers at $50,000 a pop. Then you can see we have $150,000 in the pipeline that's at this stage. People have maybe filled out a form, and you might have a lot more there. But if it's a $50,000, golf member prospect, you can actually start to see the health of that pipeline to say, how many people do we think we're actually going to bring on or move onto our wait list in the next month or 3 months or 6 months? And that information, and I'm sure if you're listening to this, you've sat in these meetings or had to prepare reports for the board so they can see that, and all this information is in one place.
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely right. And where how many people have toured this month? Really helpful metric to have, right? Just to know how many people are doing that. How many people have applied? Where are people um, in that journey is incredibly helpful for that pipeline development. But in addition to that, you can also take it a step further and say, what's the probability that we'll actually close these people based on data? So as you start using these tools, you can understand, well, we have 5 people right now who have completed a tour. Well, historically, we close about 20% of those people or 50% of those people. So that revenue that you just alluded to, sometimes it can look, oh, wow, we're going to close $200,000 based on what's in our pipeline. But we try to take a realistic look at, well, you're probably not going to close everyone that's in your pipeline. And so you can look at these weighted sort of reports in order to get some of that additional information. And just incredible amount of insights that you're able to pull out of some of these tools when you really get in and start making it a part of your everyday life.
In probability, I mean, what you're talking about there is something that you can do today to a degree with, but it's usually in the form of a hunch. Like, oh yeah,
Hmm.
and usually it's inflated a little bit. Like, we close ninety
Right.
percent of the people who go through a tour, maybe, but wouldn't you rather
Yep.
have that data? And a lot of the things that we're talking about today are these are things that we've seen it before where they're membership directors who are tracking it, but in oddball places. I mean, I've seen everything from 3 by 5 index cards to something more common, which are just spreadsheets.
Mhm.
That the membership, and you might be one of those people. If you're listening, is like you have a spreadsheet, and it's fine. It's not like that doesn't work. But when you bundle all of this into one process and one umbrella to be able to say, hey, we're bringing in new people, who are filling out forms. We're nurturing them through email, and we're actually tracking them. And like you're saying, Kev, you're scoring those prospects to find the most, to find the best prospects. All of a sudden, this becomes really powerful and way less manual. Someone isn't going through and filling out a spreadsheet, and that's maybe one of the biggest benefits. What are we missing, Kev?
Well, another feature of really all of these CRM tools, HubSpot included, is task management as well. So, not only does it do all the things you just mentioned, but also, oh, this prospect I'm talking to is heading out of town, or wants me to call him back in 3 months, after they complete this home renovation project and cash flow returns in their life. And all right, I'll set a task to follow up with this gentleman in 3 months. It's all there instead of, again, trying to make sure that it's managed in a spreadsheet or written down somewhere, or post-it notes, I've seen as well. So again, just a really helpful way um, to kind of continue to move forward and lean into some of these tools that so many other clubs are leaning into and having success with.
Glad you brought that up. I mean, I think that's one of the most powerful things is how do you track your follow-up calls today? And by having something that actually feeds you a list of people that you're supposed to call every day or every week, however you want to set it up, is incredible, especially when it's based upon the most qualified prospects that your foundation is feeding you. So um yeah, super helpful. Anything else, Kev? What else are we missing? I know this is really high level, but the point today is to just hopefully help you think through other ways that you can do your job that make you more efficient, but also give you better data and better information that you can use to provide to your GM, to your board, or whomever that might be. Anything else?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Reporting is such a big part of this, and making sure that you have intelligence in your reports. You understand, what might be coming and where some of the concerns might be in terms of our pipeline's getting really light. Maybe it's time to go, do some additional outreach, or attend some events, do some ads. Depending on what your club is interested in doing from that regard. But one of the things that I'll say is I'm really passionate about this topic because I've seen so many clubs dump a lot of effort into generating leads, um, and not a lot of effort in all businesses, not just clubs, not as much effort into managing those, and managing those properly. And so, you end up with a database or a spreadsheet or whatever, um, with a list of names that you may not know a lot about, that you're not really following up with on an ongoing basis, and it can be really difficult. And so when you're able to lean into a tool like this, you can really develop a well-oiled machine for outreach to the people who should be receiving automated outreach, manual things, when necessary, right? So someone replies to an email, that goes to a membership director. I can now take over the follow-up and move people through different stages, set tasks when I need to. Um, so you're not sacrificing the experience of your prospects, or anyone that you might be communicating with in these tools, which is, I think, oftentimes a big um, roadblock in some of these decisions. Is that we don't do things that way. That's impersonal, and these tools have come so far, in really making this, appear very personal, while also saving you a ton of time. So I'm really passionate about it because I've seen it work time and time again.
Yeah, and to your point, it actually is now doing the opposite. It's actually making you seem more attentive and more personal and more connected, which is really what we all want. And probably one of the big fears that people have when trying to use this type of technology as part of their process. So, Kev, thanks. I think we're going to have more conversation around this at some point, hopefully before too long. So, thanks for helping out, for being a part of it.
Absolutely. I hope so. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for listening. If you find this podcast helpful, be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, keep crushing your club marketing.